So sorry.
My aggressiveness.
My greatest strength is definitely communications. I know what to say to people. I know what facial expressions I don't need to be using with people. I'm very aware of the facial expressions that I use. My weakness could be that I'm a leader.
My greatest strength is probably my hardworking nature. My biggest weakness is being away from my family.
I think my greatest strength is my brain. My weakness could be kind of in the same thing. If I get too prideful or too certain.
My greatest strength out here will be my acting ability. My greatest weakness is my reality. I tend to be intimidating, and that's definitely a weakness, and that's followed me most of my life.
I'm a good listener and I'm very loyal. My greatest weakness probably is that sometimes I tend to trust people way too much.
Keeping mind over matter above all, I think, is my strongest asset. I have so many weaknesses, I don't even know what to choose like the top one.
It's tough. It's always tough to pick yourself apart when you're so confident.
I think that my greatest strength is my friendliness and my willingness to relate to people. My weakness would be my aggressiveness.
My greatest strength is definitely communications. I know what to say to people.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Ugranik is sparing with you guys on a day of unbelievable allegations. Unfortunately, we do believe them. But look, let's have a conversation about all of them. So obviously, the Kavanaugh one, or in this case two, is the most relevant and important, and we will discuss that in a minute. And it's absolutely enormous in terms of the ramifications. But later on, more allegations against more political figures. I don't know if I believe them all. They're amazing, unbelievable, scandalous allegations, and they're devastating. And family members turning on one another.
There's a lot of that today.
There's a lot of that on the show today. I mean, red weddings abound. I did a YouTube live over the weekend on the poll numbers for the Republicans. Oh, wow, that is devastating. And partly relates to the first story that we're going to do. And the list goes on and on. So it's a hell of a show today, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Obviously, if you miss any part of it for any reason, if you become a member, you can get it anytime you want. tyt.com/join. All right, Anna, let's do it.
All right. Over the weekend, The New Yorker, with reporting from Ronan Farrow, broke a story indicating that a second woman has come forward with allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. So these allegations are by a woman named Deborah Ramirez, and she went to Yale with Brett Kavanaugh, and she admits that, the alleged assault took place a long time ago, and so there are parts that she doesn't clearly remember. However, what she did relay to the reporters in this case, she says she does remember, and we'll see if these claims get investigated. But let me give you the details. So Deborah Ramirez remembers that Kavanaugh had exposed himself at a drunken dormitory party, thrust his penis in her face, and caused her to touch it without her consent as she pushed him away. She was quoted in the story as saying, "I wasn't going to touch a penis until I was married. I was embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated." Brett was laughing. "I can still see his face and his lips coming forward," or his hips, I apologize, "and his hips coming forward like when you pull up your pants." And so she says that she never came forward or told anyone about this because she was embarrassed. She was also drinking, so she was concerned that people would go after her rather than look into these allegations. And it seems as though those who support Kavanaugh today are using that against her, and we'll get to the reactions later. The claim dates to the 1983-1984 academic school year when Kavanaugh was a freshman at Yale University. The offices of at least 4 Democratic senators have received information about the allegation, and at least 2 have begun investigating it. So the New Yorker notes that the Senate had known about this, at least the Judiciary Committee had known about this last week. And the reaction from Republicans was to rush the confirmation. And that explains why all of a sudden there was this ultimatum indicating that there was a very strict deadline for Dr. Blasey to agree to testify. They later, changed that ultimatum, and now it's being reported that Dr. Blasey is likely to testify on Thursday of this week. However, with these new allegations, Senator Dianne Feinstein is calling for a postponement for that hearing in order to do further investigation, and they're also calling for the FBI to get involved.
So, if the hearings do happen on Thursday, we will cover it live and give you commentary on the spot as we're showing it to you guys on tyt.com/live. And now let's get to the heart of the Ramirez allegations here. If true and can be shown well enough for people to understand that it is true, obviously it would be the end of Kavanaugh. And now there are some progressive groups that are actually calling for him to be impeached from his current position on the federal bench. Now, she clearly says that she had trouble recollecting some of this and that she was very intoxicated that night. So that, to me, cuts in two different directions. One is that, well, okay, then you have to be a little wary about what she's saying because she's not entirely positive. On the other hand, which person who's looking to set him up politically would admit that? If you were trying to do a hatchet job, you would never say that. You would say, I'm positive, and come forward yourself, etc. So now the second part of the question of whether you believe her or not, and look, these are the things that we all look to as we read these stories. And, for example, look, even before I get to that, let me just say, if the story isn't true, and Kavanaugh got blocked on that basis, that would be really, really troubling. It would be devastating. And it would be devastating because there was an injustice done to one person. It'd also be devastating to the cause of protecting women, because then it would give people carte blanche to say, oh, we knew all of it wasn't true, etc. So that's why it's really important for us, to the best of our abilities, to discern, is it true, is it not true, is it relevant, etc., right? So then that gets to the witnesses. So Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer broke this story. They're immaculately careful with these stories. That doesn't mean they get everyone right. But they did take a lot of care and have defended themselves about this particular story to try to reach out to all the different witnesses. Now, again, this is what the FBI should be doing, so we could all have a better sense of it, whether he did do it or didn't do it, so we can make clear decisions. But now reporters are chasing it down. New York Times, and all of a sudden, the Trump administration's best friend, and I don't say that derisively towards the New York Times, I say it towards the Trump administration, because the New York Times is just simply trying to report out a story, say that they talked to about a dozen people who did not recollect this at all. And so now the Trump administration doesn't think they're the failing New York Times. They think that they're the brilliant New York Times and are spreading that to everyone who will consider it. Farrow and Mayer at the New Yorker said, yes, we also talked to dozens of witnesses, and a lot of them did not remember this story, including a really good friend of Deborah Ramirez. On the other hand, several people did remember this story.
That's right. And by the way, there was one individual quoted in the New Yorker, someone who identified as a close friend, former close friend of Ramirez's, and said, we were close for 10 years and she never brought this up. First, let me just be clear about something. Just because someone didn't bring up a sexual assault doesn't mean it didn't happen. It could be something that this individual was very embarrassed about, just didn't feel comfortable opening up about. So let's just take that into consideration. But another thing to take into consideration is that friend who was close with her for 10 years is now married to a man who was allegedly present when this alleged sexual assault took place. So there's a possibility that that person wants to protect her husband. Again, this is all analysis that's being done by me, by other people in the media, and the fact of the matter is, it's all irrelevant. What matters is having a nonpartisan FBI investigation into this to get to the heart of the truth. But that is something that Republicans do not want to do. In fact, when they heard these allegations, they wanted to rush the confirmation of Kavanaugh. And they do not want the FBI investigation. I'm inclined to believe the accusations, right? And I'm starting to think that Republicans in the Senate are inclined to believe the accusations because they refuse any investigation into these allegations.
On this allegation, to me, there are a couple of things that go in different directions. And so everybody gets to make up their own mind, and obviously a lot of people come into it with their own biases, and I hope that some don't. And I hope that I'm one of the people who don't come at it with a bias, because I always think, what if it was a Democrat or a liberal appointee and this was happening? Okay, so that leads me to one person who does remember this incident. It is an unnamed person, but Mayor and the Trump propaganda on the fake news media is ridiculous. Mayor and Farrow aren't going to make up someone and call them an anonymous source. The reason Trump believes that could happen is because he used to do it. He would pretend to be someone else, John Miller, John Barron, and be an anonymous source for people. So he thinks, well, everybody's probably a serial pathological liar like myself. So my jury's in on Trump. That's not the issue here. So on this, a classmate actually did talk to Mayor and Farrow, and this is what he had to say. Here is the New Yorker quote. A classmate of Ramirez's said that another student told him about the incident either on the night of the party or in the next day or two. The classmate said that he is, quote, 100% sure that he was told at the time that Kavanaugh was the student who exposed himself to Ramirez. Well, that's number one, pretty clear. Again, it's just one witness. But Farrow and Mayer say that he independently recalled many of the same details offered by Ramirez. They did not coordinate, so these reporters are great reporters. They said, okay, what do you remember being the details? And that person had the same details that Ramirez had in her story, and that person apparently added, quote, I've known this all along. It's been on my mind all these years. When his name came up, it was a big deal. So the only thing that where I go on the other hand is that she says she had trouble remembering. That's tough. That's a tough thing to say. Hey, there's a super serious accusation against someone at a pivotal time, and you're telling me you had to take 6 days to remember it exactly right? I get where a lot of people will go, no, I'm out. That's not good enough, right? But it is independently confirmed by this other person, and she has apparently a reputation for it by even the people who say I don't remember that story. Say, oh no, Deborah Ramirez is super honest, like known for being over the top honest, and she shows it by saying I was drunk and I had trouble remembering. No political hack would ever say that if their job was to go get Kavanaugh. So she's not a political hack, that I'm certain of, in that sense. She might be a Democrat, but this is not a hatchet job that she invented. Is she remembering right? I think that's a legitimate question, and then you have this evidence to help you make up your mind on that.
For me, what also happens to be pretty telling is her willingness to come forward with these allegations in a pretty honest way, meaning that she's admitting to, things that maybe she doesn't remember, admitting to the fact that she was drunk at the time. But more importantly, the fact that she's willing to come forward knowing the way that Dr. Blasie's been treated. The fact that she's had to move out of her home. She's had to relocate her family, and she has to hire private security because the threats against her have been terrifying. And she's also seen the way that Dr. Blasie's been dragged through the mud by Republicans. And the fact that she's willing to put herself out there with these allegations, it doesn't necessarily prove anything, but it's something to consider. And again, the most important thing to do is to conduct an investigation. And that, again, is something that Republicans do not want to do.
And understand the politics of this, too, which is that, yes, the Republicans don't want to do the investigation because they're afraid it's going to get past the midterm elections, and they might lose the Senate, and then it might not get Kavanaugh confirmed. The Democrats, for the same reason, do want the investigation, partly to find out the truth, but partly to delay the proceedings. That is a real political concern of the Democrats. So I'll take that into account as well. For me, I think, man, if it isn't true and you buried this guy and you didn't do an FBI investigation, or you put him on the court and it wasn't true and we never find out, that still is terrible for him, because forever a huge percentage of this country is going to think that he did it. And if it isn't true, I would want, if it was me, I'd be like, my God, get in there. Here's my witness one, witness two. Look, and nobody's recollection is perfect from 36 years ago, etc. But I got to get this off my name, right?
Absolutely. I know that if I were dealing with false accusations, I would 100% want someone to investigate it to ensure that my name gets cleared. And it's just strange that he doesn't want that. Kavanaugh, for his part, has responded by saying, "I won't be intimidated. I won't withdraw as a nominee for the Supreme Court." And so he continues to deny the allegations. He wants to keep moving forward with the hearings and get confirmed. But let's say best case scenario for him, he does get confirmed without any investigation. Is he comfortable knowing that there's a huge portion of the country that either doesn't know what the truth is, they're kind of, on the fence, or are convinced that he is someone who's committed sexual assault? This is a serious thing. By the way, attempted rape is a serious crime, and we're not calling for a criminal investigation, but I don't think that anyone who has committed any type of serious crime should ever make it into our justice system, but more importantly, in the highest court in the country.
Yeah, and one more, some degree of strike against him. You weigh it again at whatever you think is appropriate. He said that these charges by Ramirez were, quote, smears, pure and simple. So he's now super aggressively fighting back. Now, if you thought they were smears, I would fight back super aggressively, and you probably would too. But as I read Ramirez's story, I thought, no, this definitely happened to her. I'm not 100% sure that it was Brett Kavanaugh, but she didn't make up the whole story, and she's not doing it for political reasons. Otherwise, she wouldn't, do all the things that I described here, and she wouldn't be hesitant. And by the way, another thing you should know, and this cuts in two directions as well. The Democrats apparently went fishing here, trying to find someone because they had heard the story at Yale where Kavanaugh had done this. Number one, that apparently exists. Enough people have heard about it that the Democrats found out about it. Number two, they then went and tried to find who it happened to. And through that process, Ramirez gets revealed. So that is a strike, that is a thing in her favor, because she didn't come out here and go, it was me, I'm doing it. That Kavanaugh, I don't want him on the court. She's not doing any of that. She got dragged into it. You want to count it as a strike against the Democratic Party for going fishing and finding this person? Okay, fine. And that seems like that's what happened. But the question is it true? If I'm Kavanaugh and I read this story, of course you're going to get mad if it wasn't you. You're going to be super mad, right? But at the same time, I'd read it and go, she definitely thinks it happened to her. Okay? So then the question is, who was it? Because I didn't do it. And I'm not sure I'd go out there and say, this is a smear through and through. I said, look, man, that's a terrible thing for that to happen to her. And maybe we should look into figuring out who did it, because it definitely wasn't me.
Yeah.
Unless he just thinks, no, she's just a super, super clever liar, and this was a political trick all along. But this fact pattern doesn't seem to match that.
Right. Again, there should be the FBI involved in this. They should look into it and try to figure out whether or not there's any corroborating evidence, whether or not any of these allegations are true. It's ridiculous that it's now up to people in the media to, do the investigation and figure out what the truth is. By the way, one other thing I wanted to bring up. Last week, we played a video featuring Senator Mazie Hirono, and she had asked Brett Kavanaugh, have you ever been accused of, I don't remember the exact wording, but she asked if he ever was accused of sexual assault as an adult. And I thought that was weird wording, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm realizing, it probably had to do with these allegations, because remember, these allegations are from when he was a freshman at Yale, when he was an adult. The allegations that Dr. Blasey brought forward happened when they were in high school, when he was 17. And so who knows, what's happening behind the scenes. You're right, it does seem like Democrats are on a fishing expedition trying to find more accusers, but nonetheless, I don't want this to be a guessing game. I want this to be something that's looked into by nonpartisan professionals.
And the exact question was, have you committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature? And that was in context of when he was an adult. Mm-hmm. And so at the Yale incident, he would have been an adult, and it certainly would have qualified as that. And he said no, that he had not. So one super last thing on this is that, look, Kavanaugh has now been caught saying several things that didn't prove to be true. So that context is also relevant. And so now in the context of a guy who's swearing up and down that certain things are the case, and it turns out they're not the case, now you have this situation. well, it makes him less credible. And obviously, every new accuser makes him even less credible, and both sides know that, and hence why the Democrats want to see if there are more accusers, and now Michael Avenatti is talking about he has another one. And the Republicans think, we got to get this thing done right now,
Right.
so that there are no more accusers, and he's on the court. I don't care if he did it or didn't do it. Which way is he voting? He's voting with corporations, he's voting against Roe versus Wade, and he's in, go. And that appears to be the case, except for one caveat, unless they think it's going to cost them the election. Because the thing that any politician cares most about is their own seat. And so that's the calculations being played out this week. And actually, one super duper last thing is that in the post game today, I want to talk about the context of Georgetown Prep, where Kavanaugh came from, and how they would apparently target one woman at a time and try to get them intoxicated. And, they called it and the thing that they concocted was jungle juice, etc. But I want to talk about that, even separate from this story. Obviously, it's related to this story, but that concept of guys trying to do that, it just merits a further discussion. Let's do it in the post game. You get that by being a member at tyt.com/join.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss reaction to this story by both Trump officials, Trump himself included, and also Trump's base. Emma Vigeland was at a Trump rally in Springfield, Missouri, and they had some fascinating things to say about Dr. Blasie's allegations.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing. But what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single-payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's going to stop with us. It's going to stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money. As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here. Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you. All right, guys, we're starting the fourth week of our TYT membership campaign. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers to be a rock for you guys, the home of progressives. And we appreciate everybody who signed up as an insider and an activist. We, of course, want to show you all the things that you get for the people who signed up and for those who are considering it. So, first of all, you've got our shows. The Young Turks is one of our shows. I think you guys might know that. But I wanted to show you a lot of the other ones. The Post Game, where we do special stories about our personal lives and more stories about the news as well. Our election coverage, Aggressive Progressives, Old School, TYT interviews, Rebel Headquarters, Reporting In, The Breakdown, TYT Sports. That is a lot of shows for you guys. Basically, as I've been telling you, that's the progressive Netflix. And of course, we have some awesome podcasts as well. So you get We the People with Nina Turner, Teray Show, Happy Half Hour, The Damage Report. That's with John Idarola. The Jimmy Dore Show. You're going to be surprised to find out that's with Jimmy Dore. No Filter with Anna Kasparian. Mouthy, Messy, Mandatory. So you get all of that for just $4.99 if you're an insider. If you want to support us as independent media for progressives, activist level is $10. But I want to give you more details on what you get in each level. So insider level, you get access to TYT member shows on our app and on TYT.com. You get the post-game extras that are exclusive, special behind-the-scenes content. We've been shooting more of that lately for you guys. The opportunity to interact with hosts and celebrity guests during our live TYT town halls, and members-only merchandise and discounts at shoptyt.com. At the activist level, you get all the stuff that you get in the insider package, but also first invites and select activist-only TYT town halls, and virtual and physical TYT event tickets. You get first shot at them. So come and join us right now at tyt.com/join. All right, back in the Young Turks, member comments first. Paul says, there's a big difference between investigations done by reporters, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the FBI background check. FBI is best option to get to the truth. If you believe they are nonpartisan, as we do right now, at this point in history, then you should want the FBI. Now, of course, Trump hates the FBI, so that's another factor, because they're investigating him.
The truth.
Yeah. Fort Costa Rica writes in, it's simple. If you're innocent, you want the investigation. If guilty, you make excuses not to. Smooth writes in, leave it to Trump to pick a judge who can't get confirmed in what would have usually been an easy vote in the Senate. Now this makes me wonder the atmosphere Justice Kennedy fostered. Oh, that's an interesting comment, too. And he clerked for Justice Anthony Kennedy, who insisted that Kavanaugh be picked, apparently, according to some allegations. Okay, and then I'm going to go to Twitter for two more. Gabby Marita writes in there, are the new allegations really that unbelievable? At this point, they seem very much par for the course. Gabby, I hear you on that. I was actually referring to later stories on other allegations. And we'll get to those in a little bit. And Joe Oliver 44 says, think about the party that would march through hell to get a rapist on the SCOTUS, because he'd make it so that rape victims would have to have their rapist baby. Now, look, I think it's too over the top to call him a rapist, because that has not been proven.
Or even alleged so far.
Yeah, alleged attempted rape is the heaviest of the charges. But the second half of your tweet is, unfortunately, a very, very good point. I mean, here we have a guy who is apparently against Roe versus Wade. So if you're raped, sorry, you're going to have the rapist baby. So, I mean, that is so deeply disconcerting to begin with. But the Republicans view that as, yeah, that's no problem. I don't see why that's an issue, right? So the fact that we have to start the conversation there is so terrible. When you add in the alleged attempted rape, it does make it even more problematic. Okay, we are doing the membership drive. I wanted to check in on that and then give you guys an exciting story about that in a sec. So let's just look at our thermometer. We started at 27,661 after Labor Day. Let's see where we are today. 31,905. Now that would be great to get to 32,000 by the end of today.
Yes.
That would be wonderful. tyt.com/join to support progressive media, your home of progressives here on the Young Turks. Speaking of which, Aggressive Progressive, one of our shows, has a very important exclusive tomorrow. So make sure that you are checking that out. It is live at 3 p.m. Eastern at tyt.com/members live, because you have to be a member to get Aggressive Progressive live. But if you are, and some of the members already know who it's referring to, because they get notices ahead of time and they're super excited about it. But for everybody, sign up now. Don't miss that exclusive interview with someone I think that you guys are all fans of, with an important announcement. So tyt.com/join to become a member, and then watch Aggressive Progressive tomorrow live at 3 p.m. Eastern for that exclusive. All right, Anna, what's next?
There are now 2 women who have accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct, and Michael Avenatti, the attorney for Stormy Daniels, has come forward alleging that there is a 3rd woman who has credible claims against Brett Kavanaugh as well. So we don't know what those accusations are. Avenatti hasn't released any details about those accusations yet, but it appears that he will be representing this woman, and again, he says that the allegations are credible. Now, with that said, I think an interesting conversation would be, the political calculations / miscalculations by Republicans in regard to this story. There has been some polling recently indicating that Republicans are losing support among female voters, and so Trump. Weird slip. Cenk has more details on that. I don't know where that came from.
I have strong details. I have the best details. Maybe that's where it came from.
You do have details.
Okay, so before I get to the political calculations here, which are affected by if there is a third woman, Avenatti on Twitter has been talking about this since Sunday night. We're doing the show live here, of course, Monday night. He says his client is no longer a government employee, but that she still holds a security clearance. So that is relevant. It makes you wonder if she worked with Kavanaugh at some point in the Bush administration or when he was a judge. He says that she's had multiple security clearances. Now, there's no way of judging whether that person exists and how credible they are or what any of the details or the allegations are because they're not public yet. Now, Avenatti, as a person, cuts in two different directions. Clearly, he's against Trump, so you can take what he says with some grain of salt. On the other hand, when he has promised big scoops in the past, he has always delivered. There has not been like, hey, I'm going to do this. Just kidding. I was just trying to get media attention. That has not happened yet. So if he says there's something coming out, it doesn't mean it's going to be credible, but there probably is going to be something. So that would be a third person. So now, as the Republicans look at that, here is the calculation they're making. Okay, if we think we're going to lose the majority in the Senate, then we have to get Kavanaugh through right now. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to get him through if the Democrats control the Senate after the elections. On the other hand, if we can hold a majority, who cares about Kavanaugh? Let's just get rid of him. Let's get someone else that is not going to inflict political damage on us right before the election, especially with female voters. So that is what they're weighing right now. And how much damage is it going to do the Republicans if they keep this national conversation going where they're constantly attacking women who are making serious allegations and saying, they're lying, they're smears, they're this, they're that. So now factor in the poll that Anna mentioned that came out over the weekend, and I was blown away by the numbers that I did at YouTube Live. And so the generic congressional elections, Democrats versus Republicans, who do you want to control Congress,
was at already an incredibly high 8-point advantage for the Democrats until this poll. This poll now has it at a 12-point advantage.
Wow.
And there's only 6 weeks left. So tick, 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 tick. Now, the only demographic that the Republicans are still holding is men over the age of 45. They've lost every other demographic. And now, because their lead among men over the age of 45 is strong enough, they're still holding men overall, but now that lead among men is just down to 3 points, which is really bad news for Republicans. They have to hold men at much higher numbers in order to win these elections. Now, how about women? They've always had a disadvantage when it came to women. And to me, when the Democrats and MSNBC always touted, they lost women, I was like, yeah, but they have men. You're just telling half the story. That doesn't make any sense. So, now in this case, I just told you the other half of the equation, men. When it comes to women, the lead that the Democrats have now is no longer big or significant. It is now gigantic. The Democrats now hold a 25-point advantage among women. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do that math. Only a 3-point lead with men and a 25-point deficit among women. And women have been showing up in record numbers in the primaries. And that's just within the party. Okay, wait till you get a load of the general election. Now, the last stat that has got to get Mitch McConnell and his colleagues super nervous, which, whether it's the right thing or not the right thing, is probably going to affect Kavanaugh's fate more than anything else, is even in Republican districts, their lead among, compared to the Democrats, on average for the whole country, is down to 1 point. Now, understand that a lot of those Republican districts are super safe. They have 20-point leads, 30-point leads in some of those districts. So if you take all the Republican-held districts on an average, they're down to a 1-point lead against the Democrats.
That's not a wave. That's a tsunami. So, a Republican pollster said, "I have never seen numbers this week." So as they get together in caucus this week, which is exactly what they're doing, I need you to understand that they're going to keep it real. That McConnell's going to talk to those guys. How many of you do you think are going to lose? Head, do you think you're going to lose in Texas?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how many? Hey, are you going to lose in Missouri? Are we going to get McCaskill back into the Senate? Right. So what do we need to do? I mean, are we going to go from 25-point deficit with women down to 30 points? Then we're all toast. We lose. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's what's happening right now.
Things to say. Okay, so first off, when it comes to Republicans losing support, I do think that the Kavanaugh hearings have a lot to do with it, but also I think Republicans have really underestimated how disastrous Trump's administration has been for their poll numbers, because they've continuously supported him, and it appeared, especially when it came to the election with Mark Sanford. Remember, Mark Sanford was one of the lawmakers who decided to Trump, and he lost the election as a result of that. And I think that there was too much emphasis and too late to that, where Republicans thought, no, we better fall in line, we better support Trump, because if we do, we're going to pay the price. But I do think that there were a lot of moderate Republican voters who ended up reluctantly voting for Trump, but then later saw, how disastrous his policies were. Like the tax policy, it had very low approval ratings from the get-go, right, before it even got passed. And Republicans passed it anyway, and they didn't care. They didn't think that they would have to suffer the consequences for that. And I do think that they will. And I think that this Kavanaugh story is just another example, or maybe the straw that breaks the camel's back. We'll see. But going back to Ted Cruz.
Failed to throw for 200 yards. He was also sacked 5 times and intercepted twice by Earl Thomas. Ezekiel Elliott rushed for 127 yards, but he had a costly fumble in the fourth quarter after Dave, both Zeke and Dak put the loss on their shoulders. Let's take a look.
Bubble. And I think that Senate Republicans see that. There's a really good chance that Cruz could lose to Beto O'Rourke, and what makes that abundantly clear to me is the way that Cruz tries to attack Beto. He can't attack him based on policies because Beto's policies are popular, so instead he attacks Beto for having nice hair and good teeth. He attacks...
that is literally the weakest attack I have ever seen in politics.
I mean, is it really an attack, though? I mean,
like, hey, you know what? You're too good looking. Hey, attack me like that all day long.
Yeah.
Okay. But I guess if you're Ted Cruz, you can't help but think that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now my final thought on this is, look, do I think, taking into account Kavanaugh's potential vote on Roe versus Wade, and then that impact on the elections and your electoral chances as a senator, is a legitimate way to think about whether you should vote for Kavanaugh? Yes, I do think that. Do I think that taking your electoral chances into account is a legitimate way of deciding Kavanaugh at this point is the right way to go? No, I do not think that. I think that they should make that decision at this point based on whether they think he did or did not do those incredibly serious allegations. So I don't think politics should play into that, because those allegations are either obviously defying if he did do it, or you got for him and defend him to the hilt if you think for sure he didn't do it. Because that's an unbelievable smear job if you think he did, and you say, I don't care that he got smeared.
Like, I'd lose my political career over defending a person that I thought was being smeared. But these are politicians. They're not like you and I, right? The only thing they care about is their own seat. So as they look at these events that are unfolding, man, they all have to be super, super nervous about it, because, my God, when you have women showing up at the primaries at the record rate that they are, you got a 25-point deficit with women. Now imagine that you rush this confirmation through, and Avenatti's right, and there's a third person, and they're credible. Now you got women wondering, my God, what the hell has Kavanaugh been doing all his life? Then you got the story he didn't even do because it was, not to the level of these other stories about how he needed a certain look for women, etc. I don't want to get into too much of those details, but when you put all of that into consideration, and then you go, yeah, all these horrible, horrible charges, we don't care, women. the only thing we care about is that he's going to vote against Roe versus Wade. I mean, you might have awoken a giant that you're not going to know what to do with. And so, if you wanted record turnout like we've never seen for women voters, that is the exact recipe for that. So, if they're not caucusing right now to be incredibly careful about their political chances, they ought to, because they might be walking into something that they literally have never seen before in their political lives.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the reaction to the latest allegations against Brett Kavanaugh, because I think those reactions give you a sense of some of these lawmakers' priorities. So let's get to that. Following allegations from a second woman indicating that Brett Kavanaugh may have sexually assaulted a Yale student by the name of Deborah Ramirez, a number of people who are aligned with Trump and Trump himself have come forward denying the accusation, saying that they still support Kavanaugh and that this is nothing more than a smear campaign. So before we get to the Conways and the Lindsey Grahams of the world, let's go to Donald Trump. He wanted to address these allegations made by Deborah Ramirez, and here's what he had to say.
Mr. President, people just have concerns about these fine man with an unblemished past. These are highly unsubstantiated statements from people represented by lawyers. You should have the lawyers' representation. I think it could be, there's a chance that this could be one of the single most unjust things to a candidate for anything. People come to the woodwork from 36 years ago, 30 years ago, never mentioned it, all of a sudden it happens. In my opinion, it's totally political. It's totally political.
So a good way to figure out whether this is a smear campaign and whether this is purely political and whether this is unfair and unjust is to call for the FBI to do an independent investigation. This would be a background check, a more thorough background check, to see if any of these allegations might be true. But Donald Trump and Senate Republicans do not want that investigation to take place. So.
Yeah, the bar for Trump is so low now that whenever I watch a Trump clip and he doesn't say that water is tremendously wet, I feel like, oh, hey, he got through an answer without totally humiliating himself. Now, in this case, he's now actively decided that he's going to attack the people who might be victims of Kavanaugh. He's decided, no, I'm all in. I'm going to call it all political, that they're made up, that they're totally made up, and that the Democrats work with the lawyers for these women, come up. I don't think it's a fruitful strategy, but that's super obvious. So when was the last time Trump had a productive strategy?
Right, exactly. So Kellyanne Way was on CBS this morning, and she also addressed accusations. Here's what she had to say.
Not matter to anyone that Judge Kavanaugh has said unequivocally and categorically these allegations are false. He thinks the latest ones show a pattern of a smear campaign against him, and he had beginning that he wasn't at the party in question 36 years ago. All that has to matter. This president wants them both to testify in the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's where they both can. I just don't think one man's shoulder should bear decades of the Me Too movement.
What does that even mean, that one man's shoulder should bear decades of the Me Too movement? No, like, he's being accused by two specific people. At the moment, there could be a third based on what Michael Avenatti says. And by the way, let me just correct myself. She was addressing Dr. Blasi's allegations in that clip. And so, look, so her argument is, well, he says he wasn't at the party, so that means, but it's he said, she said. Like, that's why you need to have an FBI investigation. And that's exactly what Republicans want. Lindsey Graham, talked about the hearing with Dr. Blasi, which is at the moment scheduled for Thursday, and he was asked if there are going to be any people involved, or there are going to be any witnesses speaking other than and Dr. Blasi. And he said no, that all you need to do is hear from those two. But then if you do that, again, it's a he said, she said situation. They don't want any corroborating evidence. It's crazy.
Yeah, so the general principles she lays out are perfectly fine, but when you, in this context, it makes no sense. So what do I mean by that? So if you said Charlie Rose shouldn't have to bear a whole Me Too movement on his shoulders, he's not. He's just being judged based on what he did. Nobody's judging Charlie Rose on what Harvey Weinstein did or what Roger Ailes or Bill O'Reilly did. They're just saying, Charlie, what you did was bad enough that you got to go, right? Now, if you said, hey, Aziz Ansari should not be judged for the actions of everyone else, you should just judge him based on what. Well, we would agree to that too, and people come out on that issue. That's more of an open question and one that can be and has been debated, right? Then it's right to say we put Weinstein on these, right? But nobody's putting Weinstein on Rose or they're all judged on the merits of their particular situation. If you said to me Kavanaugh didn't do these things, but Weinstein and O'Reilly did, I'd be like, and why would I care what Weinstein and O'Reilly did in this context? You just told me the guy didn't do it. So, of course he doesn't bear the burden of what other people did. So it's a straw man argument, okay? When she says, well, you know, his point of view should also be taken into account. I'm sure that there are people whose point of view we do.
Right.
It's not like we came out and we're like, okay, it's over. Ramirez is totally right. Dr. Blasey Ford is credible. Not just credible, she's 100% right. I don't care what he says. I don't think anybody reasonable is saying that. We're saying, yeah, that's why it's hard to figure out what happened. They have a case that it did happen. That's why we'd like to find.
Well, there is one senator who does not care what Dr. Blasey has to say. And this is the point that I was trying to make. The debate happened regarding Dr. Blasey should testify if the Republicans refuse the FBI investigation. I argue that these senators have already made up their mind. They don't care when she testifies. And guess who proved that point for me? Graham. So I'm ahead to a video. Here is Lindsey Graham arguing, doesn't matter what she has to say in my mind.
I want to listen to it, honest with you and everybody else. What do you expect me to do? You can't bring it in a criminal court. You would never sue civilly. You couldn't even get a warrant. What am I supposed to do? Go ahead and ruin this guy's life based on an action. I don't know when it happened. I don't know where it happened. And everybody named in regard to being there said it didn't. I'm just being, unless there's something more, no, I'm not going to ruin Judge Kavanaugh's life over this.
Okay, so he also said that based on, what's been agreed on Thursday for the third hearing, it will just be Brett Kavanaugh testifying and Dr. Blasey. Things could change. There are new allegations by another woman. Democrats are saying we need to have an FBI investigation. Quickly answer Lindsey Graham's question, what do you want me to do? Here's what I want you to do. Here's what a lot of people want you to do. Have the FBI investigate this, do a thorough background check. He brought up, the statute of limitations is over, you can't have a criminal investigation. No one's asking for a criminal investigation. He even brought up a civil lawsuit. No one's asking for a civil lawsuit. We're asking for the FBI to get involved so we can have an independent organization try to determine who's telling the truth here.
And barring that, the least you could do is listen to hearings with one.
He's not interested in that.
If it was a Democratic appointment or Republican appointment, and I was a senator on that case, I would definitely hear both sides of the story. If it leads me to believe that he didn't do it, I'd be doubly pissed. If it leads me to believe that he did do it, then would I change my mind? Yes, of course I would change my mind. But here, sitting a United States Senator going, I don't care. There's nothing she can say that makes you believe that.
Well, he doesn't want to ruin his life. He doesn't want to ruin Kavanaugh's life by listening to that testimony and actually, being unbiased in this case.
If you thought, after listening to it, you thought,
step up. But see, that's what I'm talking about. See, if you say all these things that you think we want to hear, I think we don't get enough one. That unless you talk radio, you don't get enough one. What's the available stuff here? What are we gonna do about that?
Here's what we're gonna do. What did I say all
minutes left in the football game. He got 10 quick yards. Then he had another scramble for 11 yards. Because he could run with it because he weighs 250 and can move. So what are you doing? You go the whole game. It's got to be Dak. See, Dak, you got to keep the defense guessing. You can't let them give their ears back and keep coming after Dak Prescott. I just want to know, Skip. Why is that?
And if we're running a wing team or we playing quarterback.
And by the way, to your point, Troy Aikman for his entire career averaged 199 yards passing per game. And guess what? Troy Aikman's in the Hall of Fame. Averaging 190. I'm going to do it. I'm doing it. I don't care that they play old school football. That's who they are.
But now
they run football.
The rules are set up so you can throw the ball. Look how they protect the quarterback. Look at the numbers these quarterbacks are putting up. Not named Dak Prescott. I'm sorry, Skip.
You gotta let him run. So this is the Earl Thomas game. Jerry Jones failed to close the deal. He's the all-time plunger in pro football, and suddenly he's gone from plunger to his toilet is stopped up. That's what's going on right now because he's got to get Earl Thomas, and he's still available. Maybe you can go get him. And Earl Thomas said, why did Earl Thomas go and bow? Because he was mad at the Cowboys. Holmes' quote, he said, they're going to trade for me and extend me. They should have did it. Well, they should have. Why didn't they do it? So he was mad. He's playing angry against Jerry Jones. Yeah, and he said before the game, 2 Dallas coaches came up and told him, you're going to be a Cowboy tomorrow. Well, then he's really messing with him and trying to get in his head, getting off his game, maybe, but he is still, by all accounts, available. Now it's too late.
I'm just trying to figure out. You can put blame on Jerry Jones. You put blame on Jason Garrett. You say Ezekiel Fumble. You say he has nobody, and you say the receivers aren't very good. At one point in time, does Dak Prescott bear any culpability in what's going on with this team offensively?
Given the fact that he never shot.
Russell Wilson never had much time. 19 of 34 for $168. Skip, he's averaging 165 yards passing the game. In today's game.
You want the outskew QBR? What does the quarterback do with his legs? Well, you took his legs away from him yesterday, so he had a bad QBR.
But guess what also matters? Does you throw the ball? Do you put the ball in the end zone? What's your completion percentage? How far you throwing the ball down the field? All I know is Dak Prescott. There are 31 qualified quarterbacks. Dak Prescott ranked 20.
You know, these allegations are not credible, and I don't want to ruin the guy's life. Okay. But before listening to it, saying I've already made up my mind, well, first of all, it's not the right thing to do. Second of all, it's also not a very savvy thing to say. You know, if you were a little bit smarter, you would play politics better than this, and you go, oh, yeah, I got a total open mind. My God, my voters, you should understand what kind of an open mind I have. Then listen to it and then go, oh, well, golly gee, man, it turns out he's right and she's wrong. Right? But now they're so brazen, they don't even care to lie anymore. They're like, no, I'm biased. Don't give a damn what anybody thinks. Hey, my Republican base, remember how biased I am in favor of the man and never the woman. Okay, just so you know. And the conservative, never the progressive, and never anything else. It doesn't matter. I'm always going to be biased in favor of my team.
Well, he probably thinks politically maybe that does help him because Republican voters don't care anymore. That they do want you to be biased.
Brandon Marshall dropping all those third down plays to make them. You can't say when you don't care. You told me they were garbage. So what that make the Cowboys?
You celebrate your kid. That's what I'm saying. You celebrate the wrong kid. I don't even understand that.
It's the smallness of it. Okay, I lost that. I'm trying to win a war here. Not the battle. These games are battles. I'm trying to win the totality. Like the Civil War. You had the Battle of Antietam. You had all these battles.
That was a bloody
yeah.
I hope that one ends.
No, I'm just saying. Still a war. Civil War was election.
Well, the next battle is Detroit at home and Matt Stafford always throws a party when he goes back to his hometown of Dallas. From high school, and I was just like, really before, but maybe.
If Dak is that guy, if Dak is the guy that
here's what will happen all weekend is sweep back, and everybody will be picking the Detroit Lions and just maybe my team.
I'm picking the Cowboys.
I haven't decided if I like when the Cowboys win or lose on Monday. I haven't figured this out yet.
That's worse. Looks like some proper American barbecue. You came to the right place. Come on over here and try some burger. Either way.
Well, the Patriots were supposed to be a lock against the Lions last night,
I think that this can be fixed because I believe in Belichick. I believe in the rule, and he get those guys together and been playing better. A lot of this stuff was assignment play. You see guys in snaps doing wrong things. So I believe that he can do it. Another thing is the offense. It wasn't like New England had a great, weakness over the last few years. It's been times on the rock here and give 21, 28, almost 30 points. So that was a big draw to it. So I believe that it can be fixed. I agree with you. But here's the thing, the offense, as he said, offense would have to hold the big end of the body. If they had 0 first downs on the first 3 drives, but they had 3 first downs in the first half, where the Lions had 14. So while you're going 3 and out, you allow the Lions to come back on the field, possess the ball. Even when they're not getting points, they're possessing the ball, keeping you off the field, keeping you out.
Don't care about the facts. Actually, now that I've put it to be made that Republican voters don't care about facts anymore, so this might appeal to them.
Well, we actually have some evidence of that, and when we come our break,
we are going to hear from the actual voters. These are Trump voters who attended a Trump rally in Springfield, Missouri. So come right back. We'll show you those clips and more.
The way they've always done. Tom Brady go out there and he gets a big lead, forces the team to be one.
Well, the Young Turks, the Brother Show, it's going to be awesome. We're going to help us drop it. We became the first ever daily online web television show. No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we process, that is America. On top of it, they go, while the schools, you gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots. He lit these bars and trash bins all around town at frustration. His most viewed channel today on YouTube. The Shorties Award! Smash the web host. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another web. The Young Turks! Can I curse? Yeah! Those who watch our live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet aquatum at our door. Virgin silhouettes. It's opening up my head. I'm out of the debate. If this definitely going against I never want to see another man's foot ever. I'm gonna build a wall inside of you. I'm gonna put an anchor in you. I'm gonna face. I told you you would come.
We can talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our gun control is a problem.
The question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful folk exploited the greatest tragedy in American history. You go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling. That's what
Patriots have given up the 28 worst yards in the league. 28th worst. Their time of possession is 29th worst. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Because if you just keep giving up yard, right? You're keeping 12 on the sideline. What did Slay say after the game last night? 21 minutes for Tom Brady. It's hard to do a whole lot in 21 minutes. You're right, they went 3 and out. But they were trying to feature their rookie back. Doesn't run with great authority. He did not impose his quick will on the Lions defense, which had given up 190 yards rushing at San Francisco.
Top.
Early in the game, right? So, here's why I'm not so sure this. I am seeing a disturbing trend for the guy you idolize and love and revere, Bill Belichick. I'm just seeing a trend that is not healthy. When I see what happened in the Super Bowl, and you were there for that, your defense gave up 538 yards and 41 points to the backup quarterback from Philadelphia. That's not really a backup quarterback. Okay, well, but he is now the backup quarterback, and he always was the backup quarterback. I love it, but again, Carson Wentz actually is the backup. So, but whatever, we'll just say to Nick Foles, okay? And then in the opener,
That's right.
Yes, go back to that shot.
Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
So good.
Very, very big price.
I can't finish it because it's so much.
So right now I'm walking by Tim Robbins. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. Just going to see if he notices, see if he recognizes me. It's cool, like, he doesn't or see me, like, doesn't notice me. It's alright. It's cool. A lot of people I reckon it's okay if Tim Robbins plays it cool. He's playing it cool.
61%. That's horrendous for a genius defensive coach, right? Yeah. That just means that more than half the time on third down, your opponent's going to convert. Players still got to play, okay? Players still got to play. Okay, I can put you in the greatest defensive game in the world. You don't go out there and short the time. If you're not good enough, is that possible? The players got to play. That's what I'm saying. You got to go out there and do your job. I can put you, like I said, put you in the greatest defensive offensive scheme, whatever it may be. If you don't go out there and execute, if you hit a guy, wrap him up, you don't get him on the ground, you let him get another 3-4 yards. You had it short and stop right there, but you just didn't get him on the ground. That's going to work. Okay? And that was some of the things that
Hey, you know that defense pretty well. You're watching plus last night. Are there any difference makers? Is there anybody? Because I thought Hightower was right. I thought that was going to be a difference maker. He looked a little like a step slow last night.
Yeah, he's out. He just got back from injury, yeah.
Wait, Steve, I'll give him a chance to recognize. Let's see if he notices me. Ready?
Bernie Sanders,
Maybe he didn't notice me because, my head was turned. It's probably because my head was turned. You think it was because my head was turned? I think it was because my head was turned.
I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting? That boss gaslighted his female employees.
People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why did I just punch myself? Poke my eye out. I'm 47 and I just figured that out earlier this year. Somebody was doing it to you, or that you that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize. Right.
So he used to be in the guy. He and Big Chubb, they're used to being the guys. Now you got to wait till you get a nice rhythm, get a nice lap going. Burkhead, you're up. Oh, man, you said something on that ball for 21 minutes. 21 minutes.
Burkhead's not bad, and he got hurt again last night.
He was hurt in Cincy.
I'm not saying he's a difference maker, but he's got some stature where he can bang it up.
Does a great job of catching the ball out of the backfield. He gets you a hard ball first down. But when the Patriots offense is not doing what we're accustomed to seeing the Patriots offense do, it puts a lot of pressure on a very average to below average defense. But when Carr can put that pressure on you, he jumps out there and he has you 17 up, or he has you 21 down, and now you have to play catch up. He does the defense know you're not running the ball.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Let's check that thermometer real quick. tyt.com/join to become a member. Support Home and Progressives. Get all of our programming, including Aggressive Progressive, where we're going to break some news tomorrow. Old School. By the way, Teray is going to join us on Old School right before Politicon. So, can I see the thermometer real quick? Yes. 31,923. All right, going up nicely. Let's see if we can get 32,000 by the end of today. Let me read some member comments for you guys. Alex writes in, and I'm not sure that he was saying this sarcastically, but he says, it's weird that they would push a bad person for such a high office instead of doing the right thing and getting it clean there.
It seemed like Brady loved it for a while out there.
You saw it. I mean, you saw it. And Brady put the ball up in the stands. Brady was cut. You see Brady last night? Don't pretend like I didn't see Brady towards him last night, too. You saw it.
Trust it.
Don't let that your place. Trust it. And Cam?
He actually gets mad.
Oh, really? No, I can imagine.
Are you familiar with the Republican Party? Push a bad person for such a high office?
Yeah, okay. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying. But they told me what. Yeah. Oh, he's like his greatest guy.
I think you're being sarcastic because I'm pretty sure that they already did that for the presidency.
By the way, I feel like that's like if someone came forward with allegations that a Democratic Supreme Court pick littered one year, like
they're like, gone.
Yeah, no, they're not even having a conversation. It's over. That person's gone.
I mean, they argue that hey, these women are Democrats, and
You like to have an evil thought, but if the Black Knights, if the Black Knights had to do, give them the little that call and say, hey, no way you can't want it. Oh, man, about you. I think unless you play hard man, David and Georgia Tech, you might see. But normally you don't have one of those.
That is true.
Expression. Try Listerine pocket packs for fresh breath on the go.
so they're not to be trusted. The first person that came out with an allegation against Al Franken worked at a conservative talk show. Again, it's always projection, right? Anyway, WV Libby 71 writes in the member section, I'm so sick of hearing a 72-year-old man say unfair over and over again like a 5-year-old. Sure. Totally agree with you on that, Libby. Mathman71 says, when did not being on the Supreme Court mean someone...
Because that's of course, the Elias investigation doesn't come back to the bottom of him. But that's football. I hit across, wrapped up. I've never heard of anybody attacking somebody without any hands. When he gets himself up, as soon as you hit him, obviously going to go on. But, I think we're looking for the hits, that took Aaron out that shit.
His life was ruined. Okay, fair point. And then...
That's football. So, I don't know. I really don't know. Unfortunately, this leads going in a direction that I think a lot of people don't like. I think they're getting soft. And I think hard about this league here, but sometimes we let down guys like me play the game.
Shannon, we are beginning to see it. There was this.
Tish, ACP writes in, is that 12-point advantage for progressive women too? Because we've got several strong ones running in November. No, the 12-point advantage is generic Democrat versus generic Republican. Who do you want to go to Congress? So it is not based on particular congressional seats, nor do they ask based on males or females, or so. It's just generic Democrat versus Republican. But does that translate it over to women? For candidates, in my experience in the primaries, more so, yes. So, for example, as I saw those numbers, Kevin Yoder in the Kansas 3rd District running against Sharice Davids.
Get ready to take it to the ground, and then somehow, miraculously, not fall on top of it. Skip out to the team hotel, and then you go with the next teammate of mine. Keith Burns, who's my best friend, also coaches on the team. Charging, LA Charging. And I was talking to him, I said, man, what do you teach about the new rule about you running the quarterback? He said, Sean, the way we're teaching it is that when you get to the quarterback,
gone. So those female candidates are getting even more female voters to turn out. So let's see what happens. There's 45 or a little less than 45 days left, but I think they're in a world of trouble. All right, Anna, what's next?
All right. How do Trump voters feel about the allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh? Well, Emma Bigland, one of our reporters, went to...
The NFL has done so. This rule is done. Watch what Taylor Swift does.
To a Trump rally in Springfield, Missouri, to speak to the voters, and we're going to hear from them in just a minute.
He could have put his body weight on it, but that's not what he did. They didn't throw a flag. So I'm telling you, I get it.
But before we do so, the conservative media has gone out of its way to smear the accusers, and there are two as of now. We have Dr.
The rules are so weighted that their favor. If I played 14 years, and I went to the Pro Bowl with a lot of guys, you talking about the Montana, the Elway, Marino, and Kelly. I never, ever heard one quarterback utter, I was led till I'm going. Because you know they got smashed. Now every quarterback you talk to, if the guy at 23 said, I want to play till I'm 40. Tom Brady said, I want to play because you know why, Skip? There's a reason why can't nobody steal the COVID for not because it's so difficult. That's what we're seeing with these quarterbacks. They changed the rules, Skip. This is what you can get. And you can get it as long as you get it and don't play no college. You can't really get it. You need to wrap it. Yeah, exactly. So maybe, you know what? Eventually it's going to get to like we see in practice.
Christine Blasey Ford, who initially had the allegation of Kavanaugh groping her for consent and allegedly.
Wait on the quarterback and you break him down, they're going to throw the flag. I don't know what else they can do, Skip. Just roll and do it. It makes no sense. The quarterback is protected enough. At some point in time, you play a violent game. It's still football. You're trying to make an inherently dangerous sport safe. I don't care what you put on the move.
Attempting to rape her when they were both in high school, and then later.
There's only so much safety you can guarantee into the game of football. You don't want that to fall off. What I'm hearing your dad. But here's the thing, that's an inherently dangerous sport. And sometimes it's called collateral damage. It happens. But this is getting out of hand still. It's changing a bit. This is why you see your race 80% of the best in the first 3 years. Say that thing in for a second, Skip. Not 5 out of 10, not
all-time leader. His percentage already at 67, so it's not shocking that he's doing that.
So now when you protect him even more, ta-da!
Okay. So here's the irony of everything you just said, and it amuses me.
Yale student who was a freshman at the time accuses Brett Kavanaugh of pulling his pants down and thrusting his penis toward her face. Now, Steve Crowder is
so I'm with you on that.
a gross. I mean, that's my bias against it. You don't need to believe. You can see. Here's the way he.
Because I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers get hurt, or Drew Brees get hurt, or for that matter, Dak Prescott get hurt. And I don't want to see Russell Wilson get hurt. This is the body weight penalty we brought up in Dallas play. Can we see quickly the Tyrone Crawford? Oh, the Tyrone Crawford in the Dallas game got a 15-yard penalty, and I immediately tweeted, good, correct call. You just crushed it. You can't do that. Because it's so defenseless for little Russell Wilson to get
covered the Brett Kavanaugh allegations and how he referred to Dr. Blasey Ford.
Still in the news, everyone's talking about alleged attempted rape accusations.
It's like mind-blowing me that he doesn't get it. That was a body weight job, and it's just textbook. It's like, you're going to get a 50-yard
penalty. Yeah, Dr. Christine Ford. No longer going to be called Chris.
Don't you get this? You're smarter than that. That's by the letter of the new law. That's like, yes, that's it. Anybody could do it with the head. Clay had his right shoulder in his thing and landed on top of it, had a hand like this until I died. I ain't doing that. But last week again, he actually put his hand on the ground to gently lay Kirk Cousins on the ground. He didn't deserve a flag for that because he's trying to follow the new rule. It wasn't that bad, and obviously that play decided the game because Kirk had turned into Kirk for an interception, and it got nullified. But yesterday, this did not change the game because they were down. They're down 11 at that point, and so it wasn't a yes or no, win or lose kind of play. But they got that right, and I am good with that being right. I was good with the one they called on my guy yesterday. You can't do that to these quarterbacks.
But still, rules are so heavily weighted by the quarterback. They're putting up numbers that. Are you okay with these numbers? Are you okay with quarterbacks being the top people they need to watch? But not like this.
I know what Aaron Rodgers would be going.
I don't either, but not mad. They can't be mad 2K. They can't be this easy.
I hear the football players say, "How can I teach myself to play football?" Well, how do you pull up on a punt rush? If you just keep on keeping on and you knock the punter down and the ball's
Christine for Christine. It's such a Christy for you, Dr. Christy. Let me just say this. Of course, it's possible that the accusations here could be accurate. Right. And we're not saying that all accusations of attempted rape are false. You have to balance the scales of justice between, was there an attempted rape some 30-something years ago that someone doesn't know when it happened or where it happened and why you possibly stopped mid-rape, possibly drunk and passed out? Or is she a lying whore? We're going to present the evidence to you, and you decide. And yes, by the way, I know you're saying just me, no one else in this room. I labeled her a lying whore without proof. Granted, she did the same, but with attempted rape. That's the purpose here. Rapist. Whore.
Okay, so he called her a lying whore. He also accused of, with no evidence, rapist. Those were her allegations. But more importantly, there was evidence.
Notes where she went to her therapist 2 different occasions in 20 regarding these accusations. And so that message she took
What does Aaron Rodgers have to do with it? Jason Houston and Aaron Rodgers like that. Like another skin stronger than hydration. With 9 out of 10 men, you'll need hydration in their skin needs. That's why Dove Plus Care Line Force is keeping hydrated to keep that skin healthier and stronger. I didn't bring up that thing.
Yesterday, my Vikings, they did lose to the Bills in one of the biggest upsets in NFL history. It wasn't pretty, but quarterback Josh Allen looked pretty good, throwing a touchdown pass, running for 2 more. Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, was not good, committing 3 turnovers.
That is considered evidence. But nonetheless, Steven Crowder, I mean, this is what you can expect from trash like him.
So your high-pitched voices are really funny. So congrats on that. So I'm not calling her a doctor anymore.
It's no to his misogynistic. Never respect her. 51 years old.
So bad that I retired at the half. So they're really going to be saying, well, they're watching the whole thing. But I can assure you right there with the group, the kind of team they have nothing to do. They're going to come in here and they're going to play the tail up. Now, we need to guard against that. We need to jump on them early. 6 minutes into the game, you're down 17 now. And they got a final game. And when you get down like this, you take the running game. The Vikings had 4 rushing attempts. 2 by Cousins. Now, normally if I come out here and I say that's my first choice. I guess. Bill Cousins.
She's a professor. She's earned that respect, and she earned that degree.
Give people terrible. But that's what happens. The defense didn't help either. They had Josh Allen looking like Jim Kelly. I'm like, what did Jim? I'm like, what did that do? He hurdling people in the middle of the field. He's throwing heat. I'm like, where did this happen? Every team will have a game like this. If Buffalo wasn't a 17-point underdog, let's just say they were an 8-point, 5-point underdog, and they lost. I don't think because we don't normally see 17-point underdogs. First of all, in the NFL, the last time that happened, tell people at home the last time there was a 17-point underdog and the team ended up losing. I don't know. You do know. Your research is I want you to stop playing. I don't know. 23 years ago, it was a Dallas Cowboy against the Washington team. That was the last time that happened. 23. You know what it was. Go back 23 years. 1995. You pretend like you didn't do that, Skip. Now all of a sudden you can't have it. Yeah. So I guess it didn't matter. So I mean, the Vikings. I guess the Vikings. Yeah. No Dalvin Cook, no Everson Griffin. Only 6 rush attempts, 2 by Cousins. And when you combine, the defense had one of those games like they had against Philly, and the quarterback turned the ball over like Keenum did against Philly. This is what you get. This is a level. Every team will go through something like this. It's normally not a 17-point spread, and the team is normally at home. But we've seen teams struggle against teams that they just know the dope out there.
She was reveling in my cowboy misery, and Neil was reveling in her. I know. Because I'm not sure which is more overrated. Kirk Cousins or the Vikings defense. I said it, the Vikings defense. All I hear is it's the best. And I don't see it.
It's a man of doing something wrong, and we of course know that that's unacceptable. So she's no longer a doctor. Okay, now she's Christy. Always, find a way to put down one way or another. Then she says he's
For 3 years, that's $8 guaranteed. $84 million guaranteed dollars.
Yes.
Fully guaranteed.
Really? And he is what I've always said that he is. He is an underconfident overachiever. He's not that great, and he knows deep down, I'm really not that great. This is a good guy, and he's a smart guy, and he knows, wait a minute, we're expected to annihilate a 16.5-point underdog, Buffalo coming in here, and what do you always say, Mr. Chuck, about expectations? All of a sudden, they rose all the way to that roof. It's a hog game that you should win going away. Yes. And all of a sudden, you look up and you say, oh my God, we're down again. Oh, we're down again, and I got to keep throwing it. And you throw 55 passes, you complete 40 of them, and there's a lot of thinking and ducking going on because you average 5.4 yards.
not all attempted rape allegations are false. Wow.
Your QBR for that game, Mr. Cousins, is 10 on a scale of 0 to 100. And by the way, with a minimum of 30 attempts, you do, or no, not attempts, 30 plays. 30 plays, that's easily the worst QBR of this football season so far. It's 10, and it was the worst yesterday. So Kirk Cousins fumbled 3 times, actually. He lost 2 of them, and he threw one pick, and it was kind of a little bad luck in that year, but still, it was a horrendous home performance, and this is what got me about it. You would think that Mike Zimmer would have Josh Allen for lunch, right? Would you just think he would just spin him dizzy, like you'd be throwing blitzes at him that he's never seen before? And it looked just the opposite to me. It looked like Josh Allen was having his way with Mike Zimmer's defense. So this defense is now 17. This is just 3 games, but it's 17th in points allowed. Is that good? No, not very good for what I thought they were.
If you think about it, Skip, they did a good job. Josh Allen was 15 of 22 for 196 yards and a touchdown.
He ran it.
Yeah.
He ran 10 for 39.
Right.
Scored 2.
They had 38 rush attempts for 128 yards, so he kept them off balance. And so Skip, I didn't know he was just got this halfway. He can make some plays. Yeah.
I think he can run it as well as he can throw.
I mean,
He doesn't throw it that way.
he was very impressive. Now, I don't recommend he thinks he can make a living out of this, of hurdling people in the middle of the field.
He goes kamikaze. He's like, I'm going to run through that.
Oh, well, thank you for conceding that. I really appreciate that. Now, of course,
Build up their shoulders like other guys that are used to falling on their shoulders. So I would recommend he not try that for at least another 6 to 8 weeks. But Minnesota, all is not almost 23 years ago. The Cowboys were in a very similar situation. Now, I'm not saying that you have Troy, you have Emmett, you have Mike, you have Jim Dolan, you have Ty, you have
Charles Haley,
you have that offensive line. You have that offensive line. So I'm not saying you have all that, but all is not lost. In the NFL, I used to tell Mike this all the time. He'd get upset at me if I missed the block. He didn't think I didn't win him around that he thought I should. I'm like, Mike, the Broncos are not the only ones that pay their players. That guy gets paid too. He gives opportunity to me. They practice too. Yeah. We're looking at Minnesota. Buffalo do practice. They have coaches. They meet. They get paid. If you're in the NFL, obviously their range of talent, no matter what. Everybody at Apple is not on the same level. So everybody that's in the NFL is not on the same level. But if you're at this level, you're a damn good football player.
Well, back to my preseason predictions. I tried hard to push myself to say Vikings will miss the playoffs just because of Kirk Cousins. Yeah. But I couldn't because of the division, because I thought they were still the class of a mediocre at best division, and I think it's looking pretty mediocre.
They could have solidified. They could have put a lot of distance between them and Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago. These are Skip. You can't because you get in the division. Anything can happen. I mean, look, Detroit. but Detroit and Green Bay and Chicago, they're going to play you tough. They're going to play you tough home and away. So if you can get Buffalo, a team that you should beat, you make sure you're prepared mentally. Now, they'll be ready to put up a better performance for the Rams because they know what the Rams they will. Now, the Rams are a little banged up to leave and beat it out. Yeah, so that's going to be very interesting how they deal with Stephon Diggs and that season. But they'll be ready to play. But you can't have a letdown this before. Losing is one thing. Losing in this manner is something different. Kurt Cousins. Thank you. Kurt.
Can't end on that.
Kurt. Yeah, you made Kurt hear that.
That's worse. It looks like some proper American barbecue. You came to the right place. Come on over here.
They better come ready Thursday. Carson Wentz is back. He played in his first game in over 9 months and helped the Eagles beat the Colts 20-16. Wentz threw for 255 yards with a touchdown pass. And after the game, he said getting hit and getting back up felt quote like riding a bike. Shannon, how would you grade?
Plus, I can't give him an A because he turned the ball over. But I thought his health and mentally, he was A plus because what he was doing and the way he was spinning and fighting through tackles, you would have never known. If someone didn't tell you that, you're like, okay, that's Carson Wentz doing his thing. I thought he'd be a little rusty, some ball sailed on him, but it was the weather. It started to rain. The rain got heavier as the rain progressed. But I thought overall, I thought he played well. And then, that last, 17 plays, 11 minutes. That's what you do. That's when you want to know what a guy is made of. You hear, everybody can catch the ball in the first quarter. Everybody can throw the ball in the first quarter. But when I need it, when I'm depending on it, like the first and the 15, you know what happens? They depend on that. When they depended on you.
That was Dak Prescott.
I mean,
every conversation, here we are.
That's all Dak does is drive like that.
When last time? When last time he did that?
Giants. How about what was it? 16 plays, 82 yards.
We talking about yesterday.
That's better than what you're talking about. Well, I just ran all over.
Yeah. See, it was your right back. It was my turn. I'm reclaiming my time, dude. I got 30 extra seconds. But anyway, I thought mentally he looked good. The way he was able to move around. He did a lot of this damage without his best receiver, Alshon. Alshon should be back in the next week or two.
You got to get an excuse. Brady's without any best receiver.
Go ahead. Come on, son. Let me have my moment. He showed no signs, no hesitation. I didn't feel like he favored him. I didn't feel like he's like, I can't do this, I can't do that. He just played book. He felt very comfortable out there. So I gave him a B plus. And he showed everybody why he was going to win prior to getting hurt. So the Eagles are getting ready to take off.
Overwhelming statistics on this. Allegations in that field are overwhelmingly true. The great majority of the allegations, when you go to court, to be true. So if there are stats on it, and so the cases that are true greatly outweigh the ones that are false. If you're gonna say anything at all, you may, hey, you know what? It doesn't mean that every accusation.
You missed the past previous ones. Did they let you take that test? Okay, then. What I'm saying, he has to get ready. Get ready. Yeah. So he was studying for this test. You don't get ready unless you actually do it.
So, it's on the QBR skill 0 to 100. So I'm going to go off his QBR 39, and I'm going to grade him just the way I would grade any other quarterback. Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, you've been all over them today. So 39 to me is a C minus. It's sort of below mid, right?
No, which one
you were average, you'd have a 50. So we had a 39. So
Is true, because some are, right? That would.
But he's out there, you always tell me, if you're good enough to go get graded like everybody else gets graded.
I'm going to remember this game for a long time because the Eagles were so lucky that the quarterback for the other team was Andrew, I'm out of luck. Because he's out of luck, man. I couldn't even recognize that guy. Andrew
Luck is no lock for the Hall of Fame anymore, because I used to call him Andrew Luck, because that's what everybody told me. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not so sure about that. Oh,
He's still hurt because you know why? Still think about it.
he better be hurt, because he is shockingly below average in velocity. He's a soft armor now. He throws pump passes. Puff passes.
The arm is not
Hotbed
covered, so he's not pushing the ball down the field.
little flutter passes. I'm like, who is this guy? He's lost velocity, he's lost accuracy, and he's lost a lot of confidence because he does not play with big confidence. Yet and still, he's got 1st and 10 at the 11-yard line, time running down, and all he's got to do is he's got 4 shots to get in the end zone, and if he gets in the end zone, you lose. Philly, you lose at home. Wow, I can't do that because wasn't going to happen. Carla, it wasn't going to happen because it was Andrew out of luck. Actually, that guy was. So, of course, predicted that he gets down to 4th and 3, and I'm like, there's no way, and he's going to stumble, he hits his ankle somewhere, and he's stumbled and fall. That's the end of the game. That's the pathetic end. Way to go, Andrew. So I realized he's going through all kinds of surgery, and for a while he didn't even think he could play, but how lucky was Carson Wentz with the QBR of 39, interception, a fumble lost, some high and outside throws,
Actual, but instead he turns it around. I'm not saying everyone who says but come on, right? And
yeah, so this signals to anyone who is with or has been victimized by any type of sexual assault.
This signals to them, hey, don't come forward, because if you do, you're going to be labeled lying whore.
He has no 35 years passer rating won't be judged the quarterback on. Misleading. It was not misleading. What was misleading is your guy had 14 million. That was misleading. We did that. And then you blame everybody else. The receiver, the Elliott, the offensive line, and then offensive line.
And I give you this. He didn't have Alshon. Alshon helped make him in Foles.
Who made that? Jimmy went to dance.
Yes, he did last year. He has an undefeated last year. He led the league in drops last year.
Well, I don't know.
Yes, and just one good receiver.
Well, guess what? We won't have any of these guys that need to lead drops because they can't get over so he can throw the ball so they can drop it. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that.
So Tom Brady did have my guy Jordan Matthews from Vanderbilt University, all-time leader in the SEC in catches and yards, and now he's back as an Eagle. So at least Carson's got his old buddy Jordan Matthews.
He ain't got no buddy, but I'm trying to figure out what he got to do right now. Your guy had Chris Oakland who had 125 yards in the Super Bowl. He had Rob who had like 120 yards in the Super Bowl.
Evidence that she's lying. He has no reason to think that she's lying. And by the way, why is she a whore? How is she a whore? Even if you don't believe the allegations.
He ain't wrong though. He's wrong. And then we go space, and then we start with Kelsey and everybody else.
How about the guy named Dallas? It should have been a Dallas Cowboy. Dallas got it. How about that? Not a bunch of pass 73 touches.
And who was doing that to him in the rain?
What should have happened? Dallas Goddard was about to go to Dallas in the second round, and what did Howard Roseman, the GM of the Eagles, do? He snaked them. Went right on his neck.
We'll draft a kicker. Yeah, I'm gonna walk into him. He's gonna walk it out. Dallas Yard. Walk it out.
Dallas Goddard. Really good. He would be given that field target and tight end.
Hold on. You say you believe in Will McClay. You say you believe in Steven and Jerry Jones and his roster. Jerry told
never said that.
Jerry said this team put together. That his defense reminded him of one skill better than any of his defenses that he had in the Super Bowl. That's what Jerry said now. If it's a lie, Jerry, he said it.
Really good.
Yeah.
Two big breakdowns that Earl Thomas would have eliminated.
Well, they're not going to trade now because they're about to have a top 5 pick. You would never trade the top 5 pick. We'll see.
Allegations are a whore.
so we are going to denigrate and
Last week, he came out here, he looked into the camera. Nothing still. He wanted to do it. Yeah, he wanted to.
Predicting my
tell us what another game this year? I'm saying they're going to miss the playoffs. Yeah, I said they win games. Yeah, not that bad. I'll take it out. Yeah. Yeah, but you and Barbie, they will probably win by 5-6. No, I don't want that.
And I'm Calvary. Thanks for listening to the Undisputed Podcast. I'm Jenny Tapp.
Choose an option that works for you. The app analyzes parts of your area.
Let's get back to our feature tape. Still, the Attorney General, he hasn't been yet. He hasn't resigned yet. Nothing's. But with that, I think he's Connor shocking if he wasn't fired. Or resign on Thursday. I'm already shocked he hasn't been let go yet. I don't really want to, but I gotta have to take the hand when he did. When he did, the Dolphins advising him with the agency to walk to his spot, they were and that's the and there is not hard. It's not there to smoke smart. That's why
So Rosenstein seems to have at least part. Participated in some issues about recording Donald Trump, and some people say he was joking, some people say he wasn't, says he did not make the comments about invoking the 25th Amendment on Donald Trump.
and he is in charge of the Mueller investigation, and that would be terrible to fire him. But I'm just keeping it real with you on what I think Rosenstein might have said or not, based on the New York Times reporting. And so you're right, Anna. If Trump did not see this reporting coming, and he heard about it, based on every reaction he's had to every other damaging story, he would have immediately blown his top, and he would already be done with this. So it is surprisingly measured so far, and there was a lot of drama today about he's already fired.
Might have like kings, I guess. It's crazy. But you mind? That is unearthly. Might be an alien. Time and time again, we hear him call out the moments guards. He might have X-ray vision. I just received.
Already resigned, and back and forth, and it turns out that his decision is at least going to be executed on Thursday, whether it was made on Thursday or much earlier or today, it doesn't really matter. But so then that leads to the question of who's going to replace him.
Disaster.
Okay.
All right, so let me give you some information on that. So his successor is expected to be Solicitor General Noel Francisco, and he has been very friendly to Trump. He has supported pretty much everything Trump has done. And there's also a conflict of interest here, and what's driving me crazy about it is people are like, oh, is this problematic? It's a conflict of interest, it's problematic. So he is a former partner of a law firm that's represented Trump. For a very long time, the Jones Day law firm. And so, yeah, huge conflict of interest. He shouldn't be the successor if, and we expect this to happen, Rosenstein gets fired. So there's that. And he is more likely to do... what Trump wants him to do with the Mueller investigation, which is to end the investigation and fire Robert Mueller.
So the last two things on it, Francisco apparently was also seen having a meal just a little while back with Rosenstein and Jeff Sessions, and people took that as a show of solidarity, that if you fire Sessions or Rosenstein, you're not going to get a better result with Francisco. But Francisco could have been doing that to play political games. And then when Trump does fire them, he goes, yeah, of course, I represented Donald Trump or my law firm did, for all these years. He's free to go, right? So it's an obvious problem there. And then... And then Kirsten Gillibrand and other Democrats are now saying we.
World Series of Poker presented by Milwaukee's best licensed Adam Jones from Sturgis, South Dakota, which is very close to Deadwood, where Wild Bill Hickok was killed playing poker.
Have to act right now to make sure that we pass a law saying he's not allowed to fire Mueller. And the Republicans all along had been saying, it's okay, you would never do that. Oh, come on. Are we still hanging on to that ruse, that preposterous claim? Donald Trump just firing someone that is investigating. That would never happen. Really, nobody in the country believes that. So if you really do want to protect the special counsel, who already has gotten guilty pleas and convictions in court from a lot of Donald Trump's associates, then you should pass a law to do that, so we're not guessing whether Trump's former lawyer is going to let him off the hook or not.
All right, moving on to the midterms, there's some interesting commentary coming from Trump supporters that I want to get to. Recently, the RNC had done a poll of Trump's base. Is to figure out whether or not they think there's a blue wave or red wave coming during the midterm election. So this leak survey conducted by the RNC found that a majority of President Trump supporters don't believe that Democrats have a chance to win back the House, okay? And so it goes into specific numbers. 57% of people. One of the absolute best ways to learn is to go beforehand and navigate it. I bet people that I don't think it's just he's letting his rage relatively far. Now on the river, pretty much down to just two up. Is it about you that who identified as strong Trump supporters said Democrats don't have a chance, while 37% believe they do. Now, part of the reason why they think that there's going to be a red wave is because they just believe everything that Trump says. And Trump has repeatedly said, don't worry about the blue wave. It's all, lies. There's going to be a red tsunami. So I wanted to see if the findings of this poll were really accurate. And so Emma Vigeland, our reporter, went to a Trump rally in Springfield, Missouri, and asked whether or not his supporters think there's going to be a blue wave, red wave. What do you think? And here's what they had to say. Jones was the Braves that had football 1600 and now Jones called another support of the club. It introduced 4-6 and Toga just when he was looking for a set of fours.
You are the silent majority? Well, a lot of people, I wear my hat, I have a sticker on the car. I have beautiful women like you come up and say, I love your hat. And they never did, that's just unusual. And people vote for Trump, but they're not going to say. They're just, they're too afraid that their neighbors, their friends are going to say something. Me, I look like Santa Claus, and who wants to beat up Santa Claus? That's just bad. Yeah, choo-choo, bad. They're just bringing out more Republicans out of the woodworks.
Democrats?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think?
Keep on lying and running your mouth. Them Democrats will go by the wayside and they'll all be Republicans.
They tried that story once before. It didn't quite work. The wall came down. Another wall's going to go up.
Thank you.
Get out and vote. Red tsunami. Red wave.
Okay.
Yes.
So not the blue wave. You guys are not buying that.
No, we're not buying that.
Yeah. All right. God bless your hearts. Stay at home. So this is a wonderful case of Donald Trump's lies coming back to bite him. So this is ironically very Hillary Clinton-esque. Hillary Clinton would tell everyone, "Oh, we're going to win. We're definitely going to win." Well, that's not a great way to get out the vote. In fact, there are stories of how her team would call into MSNBC and yell about their on-air hosts, including Mika Brzezinski, if they ever said that Hillary Clinton might not win. They'd be like, "How dare you allow a host to say that?" First of all, let's note that MSNBC is taking Hillary Clinton's calls on what to say. And not say on air, which is preposterous. They should never do that. But apparently they did that with some regularity. Mika Brzezinski said that on air, so that's an admission. And I know other MSNBC on air personalities that said, yes, they called all the time to critique what we were saying on air. That situation is crazy. But why would you want people to be overly confident that you're going to win? Then that makes it less likely they're going to show up. So what Trump has done is said, "Oh, don't worry about the blue wave. That's not true. Remember they said Hillary Clinton was going to win." And a lot of his supporters say the same thing. They're quoted as saying, "Tech media told us Hillary was going to definitely win. That's not going to happen." Well, that makes it less likely that they're going to show up to vote. Great news. Stay at home. I'm sure you got this, guys. Definitely. Red wave. Sit on your couch and enjoy the red wave. See what happens.
Yeah, well, for Trump, his ego goes above everything else, including strategy, logic, rationale. Like, he wants everyone to think he's amazing, even if that's not the truth. And so, yeah, he's going to say there's a red tsunami coming because he thinks that makes him look good. He doesn't think about the consequences of that or the ramifications, and I'm really looking forward to see it play out during the elections.
As I told you earlier in the show, the Democrats now have a 12-point lead in who should take over Congress. That is an enormous lead, and meaning that there will be not only a wave, but perhaps a tsunami in the Democrats' direction. I'm not among the people who said Hillary Clinton was definitely going to win. I said, watch out, he has a 30-35% chance of winning, even on election day, let alone earlier when I said he would win. And she had an advantage of the polls, but it wasn't that big, and he still had a 35% chance of winning. And as you know, Ben and I talked about that day, that means that could easily happen, and it did happen. Now I'm telling you, numbers are real. They're not made up. They're not fake news. It depends on who you're polling, and you have to be sophisticated about looking at the polls. And I think that over the last 16 years, we've proven that we're a little bit sophisticated on this, having gotten many of these things right when the mainstream media didn't. And I'll tell you right now, that 12 points is real. And especially if Trump voters think that there's no danger of them losing, some percentage of them, historically, that's a fact, will stay at home, thinking there's no threat at all.
Right.
And then that will make their problems way, way worse. So in conclusion, I'm going to tell myself, all we cared about was politics, we wouldn't even do this video. But our job is also to bring you the reality, so we're showing you what Trump voters actually think, even though showing them that they're wrong, it doesn't help our cause. But they are. There is one way to find out, so we'll see you on November 6th.
All right. There is a breaking news story involving Kavanaugh and his latest defense against these sexual assault allegations. When we come back, we will show you what his latest defense is, and it is amazingly bad.
I'm Jake Uger. Of the Young Turks.
We're here at Occupy Oakland. Yesterday, there were peaceful marches from City Hall to the port.
Young Turks were lucky enough to go to a campaign rally for Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is the candidate Barack Obama pretended to be in 2007.
However, the protest did turn ugly during the nighttime when a group of anarchists attempted to occupy vacant buildings. You see graffiti all over the place. There was a bonfire in the middle of the street.
So one of the Young Turks, fourth day on Occupy Wall Street.
So we just did a tour of the whole Occupy Wall Street compound. Down here.
The protests are gaining some traction.
All right, I'll watch the show all the time. Good luck.
I'm not sure if you want to get to know how. First, you have to stumble. You have to fall a few times.
We can make it happen. It's amazing what's happened. And all of a sudden, everybody feels hope. America first. America first.
Yes, President Donald Trump has made life hell. Everything is always about race because the sitting president, known for his trigger Twitter fingers, somehow kept a tight lip over the Nazis who returned to Charlottesville last week. If Republican politicians genuinely cared about all lives, we wouldn't be facing the largest wealth redistribution in American history.
Trump, who claims he wants to make America great again, but isn't really interested in protecting the little guy, just withdrew Obama's memo and told collectors that they're free to go back to screwing over struggling Americans with fees.
This decision will impact far and wide, especially, and listen for the irony here, those who already paid more out of pocket each year due to soaring internet package prices. Scores more white people are killed by police. White people make up more than 75% of the U.S. population. So you can justify your bigotry and feel better about saying these things at dinner, polite dinner conversation, outside of racism and home frauds.
Does the president normally watch these kind of anti-Muslim videos that have been posted by this group?
Here's a list of what the president watches every day. It goes cartoons, Fox and Friends cartoons, followed by, at noon, it was a bunch of Civil War documentaries for like 6 hours. But he claps at all the wrong times.
Our teachers are suffering, and we won't even cut 10% of the money going to military contracts.
The cost of one modern heavy bomber is this. A modern brick tool is more than 30 cents.
A tiny sliver of the defense budget would pay for 395,000 teachers.
We're talking about the future of the country. We're talking about the nation's youth and making sure that we are competitive globally, and the only way to do that is to make sure that we provide quality education for our young people.
Back on Young Turks, members comment, Lord Mahakala writes in, Vanity Fair reported that Rosenstein's charade was to get media attention away from the new Kavanaugh allegations. That's interesting. Could make sense. Now, there's new allegations today. You distract today, and then if you fire Rosenstein on Thursday while the hearings are going on, that's another distraction. Double distraction. That's very smart. Makes sense. A rare good strategy by Trump, by the way. I'm sure it wasn't his idea. Okay, YouTube Super Chat. Grace Lord says, love the show. I'm a Brit who used to live in North Carolina and followed TYT in high school, but I moved to Australia and lost touch until 2016. It's brilliant to see progressives actually fighting for the people. Keep it up. Thank you. We appreciate it, and thank you to all the members who joined us to help us in that fight. I want to take a look at the thermometer real quick. TYT.com/join to become a member. 31,945. We're trying to skip to 32,000 by today, and there is Rebel Headquarters still coming up, where I'm going to be interviewing people about criminal justice reform, and then later the post game for the members, where we'll be talking about the culture that existed in Georgetown Prep in the 1980s when Kavanaugh went there, about how they would target women in particular. Okay, so Anna, what's next?
All right. Fox News spoke to Brett Kavanaugh, and Brett Kavanaugh offered his latest defense against sexual assault allegations that have been lodged against him. So he spoke to Martha McCollum, and I don't want to give too much away. Take a look at what he claims.
We're talking about an allegation of sexual assault. I've never sexually assaulted anyone. I did not have sexual intercourse or anything close to sexual intercourse in high school or for many years thereafter. And the girls from the schools I went to and I were friends.
You're saying that through all these years that are in question, you were a virgin?
That's correct.
Never had sexual intercourse with anyone in high school?
Correct.
And through what years in college, since we're probing into your personal life years?
Many years after. I'll leave it at that. Many years after.
Wow. Yep. Wow. So no one's accused him of having sexual intercourse with them so far. The only accusations against him include attempted rape and allegations that he thrusted his penis toward another woman's face. So I don't know why it would be relevant what his virginity was at the time, given what the accusations are. But more importantly, like, what do you want us to do with that? Like, are we supposed to, like, go back in time and Do what? Like, how do you prove that? And it's just a stupid defense. And I get it. Like, it's all meant to try to reinforce this I'm a good boy, persona that they're trying to push on people. But I'm not buying it. Your virginity status means nothing when it comes to defending yourself against these allegations.
So, I guess this is now the 40-year-old virgin defense, but it's not a very convincing one, since, again, the allegations have nothing to do with whether you actually finish the act, because, remember, of course, Christine Blasey Ford says that she was able to get up once the second guy piled on, and they fell to the ground. She locked herself in a bathroom and then ran away, so it's just not at all relevant. But it's this golly gee, aw shucks, never me, I'm so innocent type of situation that I don't think is very persuasive, especially given the things that we do know that we're not holding him accountable for, but he was part of a group that drank excessively when
before you two jabronis start playing Holly and Frazier and the referee being played by that prostitute in training. The Rock's got something to say. When The Rock woke up this morning, he was feeling great. The Rock was feeling great knowing that at Backlash it was going to be Triple H with Vince in his corner facing the Great One. The Rock felt great about that. The Rock was fine with that. The Rock liked that. But now, after hearing Vince McMahon's announcement, The Rock says what was once a great situation just got better. Because you see now it's going to be Triple H with Vince in his corner and The Rock with Austin 360. Now the entire world knows of The Rock and Stone Cold history. They know that the probable is a rattlesnake and the number.
Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. It's got some great stories and guests for you guys today. So first of all, I wanted to tell you about an announcement on ice cream, because on a progressive political show, you really mainly want to talk about ice cream. But in this case, it is in fact literally progressive ice cream. Ben & Jerry's is doing a contest along with MoveOn.org They've picked 7 progressive candidates running for Congress, and they want you guys to try to find flavors for them based on who they are. And whoever wins will get a pint of ice cream, and you'll get named a Ben & Jerry's flavor, which is kind of awesome. The 7 endorsed candidates are Jess King, Amar Kampa-Najjar, Lauren Underwood, Aftab Purval, J.D. Scholten, Stephanie Rose Spalding, James Thompson. The majority of those are Justice Democrats, meaning they are running uncorrupted, no corporate PAC money, and very progressive politically. They all are very progressive politically. And I want to tell you about James Thompson in particular. But first, make sure that you're going to moveon.org/Ben and Jerry to participate, and you got a deadline of midnight on September 28th. So that is coming up, obviously, this week. So go to moveon.org/Ben and Jerry. Name flavors after them. I love this quote. Nothing is so unstoppable as flavor, according to Ben and Jerry. So that's great. Wonderful progressives. James Thompson is one of the people on that list. He's been on the Young Turks before. He is, formerly very red district, but he has basically caught the Republican in that district, Ron Estes, in the polling. So he's super close to winning, and helping him in particular would be wonderful. We love the idea of progressives winning in the middle of Kansas, but this district is the home base of the Koch brothers. So the way to make that happen is go and donate to James Thompson at tytforthompson.com. tytforthompson.com. This is similar to the campaign we ran in Kansas' 3rd district. This is the 4th district. Let's go get a progressive home base. To convert the Koch home base to a progressive home base would be amazing. So let's try to make that happen for James and for all of us. Okay, now let me go to our first guest. Desmond Meade is the president and CEO of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Desmond, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no problem at all. So you've got a unique campaign in Florida. You're trying to restore the voting rights of a lot of folks, and you are working with at least one Republican, if not many, to make that happen. So first of all, who is the affected group here? How many people are in that group, and why do you think they should have their voting rights back?
Oh, thank you so much. I think when you talk about people who are impacted, in Florida you're talking about 1.68 million people, and of those, at least 1.4 million of them have completed all terms of their sentence. And these are people from all walks of life, from all political persuasions, all racial groups. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that the majority of these people are not people that's coming out of prison, but the people that are already in our communities, in our homes, in our congregation. Florida convicts about 170,000 people each year of a felony offense, and less than 25% of those are actually even sentenced to prison. And so the overwhelming majority of people who we're talking about are people who are out here among us in our community that's just trying to move on with their lives.
So, Desmond, you're in that group, aren't you?
I most definitely am. Because of a drug addiction, I got in trouble a few times and eventually was sentenced to prison. But, I was able to overcome that. And when I got out of prison, I still had to deal with other drug addiction, which led me to railroad tracks and contemplating suicide. But the train didn't come that day, and I ended up crossing those tracks, checked myself into drug treatment. After that, I moved into a homeless shelter, and while there, I decided to go back to school. It worked out kind of well for me because eventually I ended up getting accepted into law school, and in May of 2014, I did graduate with a Juris Doctorate degree. However, because I live in the state of Florida, I cannot practice law. I'm married and have 5 beautiful children. I can't purchase a home in many places because my civil rights have not been restored. And of course, the biggest of them all is my wife ran for office last election cycle, and I couldn't even vote for her. And so I sit with the 1.4 million people who have completely served their time, but are still left out of this process.
That's a powerful story, and there's a lot to get out of that story. And I'm glad that train didn't come for you; another train came. And I want people to not underestimate someone who happens to be homeless at a particular time. And they might be going through some rough times, but it doesn't necessarily mean that is the content of their character. But Desmond, you're also working with a white conservative activist in this arena. Who is that, and why are they motivated to work on this?
Well, the person who I'm working with now has now become my brother from another mother, Neil Post. But he's not the only one. One thing that I discovered early when I used to travel the state of Florida by myself was that, because of the war on drugs primarily, and this country's infatuation with incarceration, we know that felon disenfranchisement has managed to touch many households and has managed to spread out, because we know that initially it was intended to keep the newly released slaves from voting, but like a tumor, when left unchecked, it spread across a lot of the body, and so now it's impacting all Americans, whether they're white, black, Latino, rich, poor, whether they're Democrat or Republican or independent or don't care either way. So many people have been impacted by this, and that was something that I discovered early on in my journey around this campaign. And one of the first people who I ran into was a gentleman by the name of Neil Post, who, like I said, has now become a brother to me. And I think that the nature of our relationship is kind of indicative of what we're doing with this campaign and what makes this campaign real special. And that's because we've been able to connect along the lines of humanity. And because we've been able to do that, we find that we have more in common than we do opposing each other. And so because we were able to connect along those lines, he and I have made a formidable duo, crisscrossing the state, energizing people, and creating a grassroots movement that the state of Florida has never seen before. And so we're very excited about where we're at. We're nearing the finish line. The grassroots momentum is growing. It's causing people from all over, organizations from all sides, both sides of the fence, to recognize this for what it is and jump on board and support this.
So, Volz, by the way, for the audience at home, is a former congressional chief of staff. And he was sentenced to probation for his role in a lobbying scandal. But as with anybody, conservative or liberal, people can make amends. And we have to believe in second chances. In fact, the website here is secondchancesfl.org. FL obviously for Florida. And Desmond, you guys got a vote coming up, right? And that's why this is even more important right now.
Oh, yeah. So let me tell you, through an unprecedented grassroots effort, we were able to collect, over 1 million signatures to place this particular ballot question on the ballot for November. We are Amendment 4. We're asking folks to vote for Amendment 4 for second chances, right? Realizing that the system here in Florida is broken. And I don't know if you would even realize how broken it is. But when you look at Florida being only one of 4 states that permanently disenfranchises its own citizens, and then you look at the process or the ability to get those rights restored and what they make you go through, having a person wait, up until 17 years and still not guaranteed to have their rights restored, or the story of the Army veteran that put his life on the line with his country and then have to wait 30 years because he wrote a bad check. And so we're very excited that this is coming up for a vote. The people of Florida, the voters of Florida, put this amendment on the ballot, and based on polling, the voters of Florida is overwhelmingly supporting this amendment, and we're looking forward to the voters really coming out. And when we talk about voters, we're talking about from all spectrum, whether they're conservative, whether they're progressive, young, old, black, white, it doesn't matter. It seems like everyone across the board is really supporting this and is on board with what we're trying to do and to bring a little sunshine back to the state of Florida. And so we can't wait for November 6th to get here, so 1.4 million American citizens can experience what it's like to participate in true democracy again.
In a sense, to be free again.
Yes.
And I want everybody to understand, and it's really important, just winning isn't enough. They have to win by over 60%. So they got to get 60% on this vote, and obviously the 1.4 million people affected can't vote to see if they can get a vote. So it reminds me.
They have family members. That's so beautiful about this is that we're talking about over 1.6 million people who are impacted, how they're getting their family members and friends to vote for them. So this is a vote around bloodlines. This is a vote around love. This is not a vote around fear or exclusion, but understanding that people from all walks of life have people out there, family members, who are registered voters who care about them getting a second chance.
And by the way, you should also know, the last thing is that Florida is not the norm. Only Iowa, Kentucky, and Florida automatically and permanently keep anyone who's committed a felony from ever voting again. They're the only 3 states who do that. So it's time to roll it back in those states and get back to sanity. So secondchancesfl.org is your opportunity to do that. And especially if you live in Florida, make sure you go out and vote. Desmond Meade, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back with Progressive Candidate. We'll be right back.
This isn't Anderson Cooper. If you say some BS, I'm not simply going to let it slide and then move on to the next thing. This is what the establishment does not understand about politics. You can change the conversation.
This is my place in that broader revolution.
We first have to fight the food that we are eating. We then have to fight for our freedom. Then we fight for our equality. And now we are fighting for our survival because your militarized police force thinks it's okay to shoot us at any point in time. Look at what's happening in society today. It's hard not to think about what we're going for.
We're all out here. Everybody that cares about where this country's going are out here.
We are going to win this fight. We are going to transform this country.
Whoever wins this primary wins the seat.
We just took down one of the top establishment Democrats in the country.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Down goes Crowley! Down goes Crowley!
So let's be honest, the only reason that this match exists is because Brady is a creepy obsession with Jeff Bezos in his ear. There are other matches on the card that were worthy, not to mention the personal. I'll be inside the zone, but I'll get to that later. Here, my name is Hands. HBs. What are the rules of this matchup? There are 80 rules inside Melton Cell Talk that has been clearly established for this match 38 previous times. One more submission in the middle of the ring. So many Hell in a Cell matches that involves occur outside of the ring and even once on top of the cage. It had to be a different Jeff Hardy, even though what we are witnessing throughout this match is the same Jeff Hardy we've always seen over the years in the WWE. I don't see a difference here in comparison to the rest. I completely burst out laughing the moment Randy hit the cage and then turned around right into the ring post. That was funny as hell in the cell. It's all legal. Fans are chanting "We want tables" despite the fact that they got their wish before they even
All right, back on the Young Turks. I'm sorry, Rebel Headquarters. I only do that about every time. So it is part of the Young Turks Network. Let's go to our next candidate here. Joining me now is Renee Hoganson. She's running in Missouri's 4th District against Representative Vicky Hartzler, who is a Republican seeking her 5th term. Renee, welcome to the program.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So first, let's start with your opponent, the incumbent. Does Vicky Hartzler agree with the majority of the people of Missouri on the issue of what you guys had as Proposition A, what they call right to work, which is an ironic label, or does she not agree with the people of Missouri?
Well, Vicky Hartzler has signed a national right to work bill, and why that's significant is Missouri, as you mentioned, we just had an election voting down right to work by 67%. And the other thing to me that's significant about this, I was with the unions as we went from the Capitol building in Jefferson City to the Secretary of State to deliver 300,000 signatures from the Missouri people that said they want to vote on this issue in August of 17. 3 times the number of signatures required to put that referendum on the ballot. Vicky Hartzler, 2 months later, signs, co-sponsors national right to work legislation. So basically what she's saying is she does not care that the people of Missouri wanted to vote on it. She does not care that we just had an election and we do not want to be a right to work state. She wants us to be a right to work nation. And it's just a slap in the face to Missouri voters. It's a slap in the face to democracy. It is a slap in the face to families' wages.
Yeah, being against 2/3 of the voters doesn't seem like a particularly brilliant strategy, or one that is based much on democracy. But, of course, the way that a lot of these incumbents win in both political parties is not because they're appealing to the voters so much, but because they raise so much money and they drown out voices like yourselves with all the ads that they can buy. In her case, does the money come from the people of Missouri, or does it largely come from the business interests who would like to crush those workers' rights?
Exactly. That's exactly the problem. When you look at her filing on the FEC website, half of her money comes from PACs, Coke money, NRA money, sugar money from all over the nation. We don't really know why. The other 45% comes from people that can write $10,800 checks. Less than 5% of her donations comes from people like you and me, Cenk. My PAC money, my filing, I have no PAC money. I have all individual donations. We are a grassroots campaign. We've raised over $300,000. We've had 3,800 people donate to this campaign. So our average donation is right about $70, and I could not be prouder to be representing the people of this state. It's why I started running for Congress a year and a half ago, because I knew that it was going to really require a lot of groundwork. It was really going to require a lot of handshaking and meeting people where they are, and knowing that I would have a Coke-funded, a PAC-funded, well-funded opposition opponent.
Yeah.
So that's just the landscape.
Yeah, and look, we talk about it on the show often, but still, I'm not sure people understand how difficult it is to raise $300,000 without PACs. To raise it, $5, $10, $100 at a time. So it really shows incredible grassroots support for your mission. So let's talk about what that mission is. I hope we have time to get back to your what you've done in the past, because I find that interesting too. Not a lot of progressives with your background, so what are the big campaign issues that you're focusing on?
Well, my fundamental why for running for Congress is in my platform that I call house cleaning reforms. Campaign finance reform, lobbying reform, and redistricting reform. And I believe that if we can get reform in these areas, get the money out of our elections, disempower the lobbyists, and ensure that our voters are actually choosing their congressmen, we will recreate our government in the image it was originally conceived, that really is run by the people and for the people. And that's really my why. I mean, when Senator Warren introduced her anti-corruption bill on the Senate floor, I mean, that I am all about that. If I am lucky enough, or fortunate enough, I guess, to be elected in November and go in January, if that bill has come to the House floor, I am going to be all over that. And if it doesn't, I will submit my own. I will introduce my own piece of legislation that's an anti-corruption bill, because it has, what we have right now is so far from democracy. I mean, we basically have oligarchs, and we have a plutocracy really running this government, and it's just sort of dressed up to look like democracy. And we've got to work to take this back.
Yeah, I also love Senator Warren's anti-corruption bill. She came on this show, Rebel Headquarters, to introduce it, and so if you're a vote in favor of that, I need everybody in Missouri's 4th District to rush out to vote for Renee Hoganson, because we have got to get money out of politics. We have got to clean up what's happening here. It's not that much removed from the oligarchs in Russia and other places that run the place, and these billionaires and these multinational corporations that buy all of our politicians. It's a disgrace to what's happened. The founding fathers said we need to be the representatives need to be dependent on the people alone. And that is not the system we have now. We need that bill. We need an amendment. We need a convention. We need all those things to make that happen. Now, you also say that you want to provide a living wage for working families. So when you say that, what do you mean? How would you improve the wages of the people in your district?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because, I get asked a lot about the $15 minimum wage. And I 100% believe that we have to have living wages for our families. The situation, however, in rural America, and certainly in rural Missouri, I can speak to that, being here, rural communities are about 25% depressed compared to our metropolitan counterparts. And so really, if you created a wage that was $12 an hour, that would be much closer to what $15 would actually represent in Kansas City or St. Louis, as an example. What I would like to do, because we have to ensure that our workers have living wages. It is a moral imperative. So one of the things that I believe we can do is we can help our small businesses in particular to sustain and deal with these increased costs of doing business. So I would like to create a quarterly tax credit commensurate with the increase in the wages. We do not want to be shutting down our small businesses, especially in our rural communities. Our rural communities are already struggling so much, largely due to the changes in the antitrust laws that happened back in the 80s, and the lack of competition and the higher incidence of monopolies that we have. But which of course obviously is partly what has been crushing our wages. So we want to help our small businesses in particular to sustain those increased costs, and that would be a great way to do it. That would infuse money directly into the pockets of their employees and would stimulate their local economies.
So, Renee, you would know a thing or two about running a small business because you ran 3 local magazines and then sold them. But that's not the unique thing that I was referring to about progressives I don't often see in their background. There's plenty of progressives who are business people who are running today. I know because I interview them all the time. But one I haven't seen yet was that you're a Rotarian. My dad was in the Rotary. So how was your experience in the Rotary, out of curiosity?
Well, I believe in service. It's the why for why I'm running is I believe that we need to step up if we can, and we need to serve. And to me, serving in Congress would be the highest form of service that I can imagine. So it's about service. It's about being a public servant, and that is I don't know if it's the chicken or the egg for me, but I believe in service as a principle of a happy life. I believe in giving to others, and being a Rotarian has certainly been part of that in my adult life. I think I've had a service component to my life since my early 20s, really.
Yeah, I remember when the Rotary was taking a vote on whether to allow women, and I remember my dad, who at the time was a Republican, was conflicted about it because a lot of the guys didn't want that to happen, and that's the circle that he was in. At the end, he voted yes to admit women, and I remember him telling me about it at the kitchen table, and he said, "I have done lots of business at Rotary Club. They should have a chance to."
That's awesome. Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that he voted to allow women. Yeah, I was a little disconcerted. I was already a member when I realized that it was 1987 when Rotary allowed women, allowed female members. So, yes, at the moment I realized that, I thought, oh, do I really want to be a part of a group that is so late coming to this table? But that being said, Rotary now, the landscape of Rotary is quite a bit different, is quite a bit more inclusive. My first Rotary club, we had the nickname of the Women's Club. So we had 50% female membership, and it was fairly young. It was much younger than the other clubs. In Columbia, Missouri, where I live, we have 8 different Rotary clubs. So it's a very strong Rotary town. I know a lot of other towns will have other organizations, other service organizations that are maybe more predominant, such as Optimists and Lions and that. But in Columbia, Rotary is a very strong brand, if you will.
Yep. All right. I want everybody to know what the website is, ReneeHoganson.com. And obviously, she's going to need your volunteers and your donations to make this possible, because her opponent has a ton of corporate PAC money. And this election is winnable, especially in what appears to be a blue tsunami coming. So please get out there and volunteer and donate for progressives who want to fight for you. You should fight for them. Renee, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cenk. I really appreciate you having me. Thank you.
No problem. All right, guys. We are going to come back for the members with a post game where we're going to talk a little bit about the culture that existed in Kavanaugh's high school days. It's a disturbing one, but one that requires a little bit of nuance and conversation around it. So tyt.com/join to become a member and get that post game. We'll see you there.
These comments are about the racist what? More. Yes, it's not.
Attention today. It was written by the New York Post, so of course take it with a grain of salt, but it was a profile on some New Yorkers and their dating habits. It was titled, "Why I Won't Date Hot Women Anymore." So I would